Start with just call the order at 7:05. And we will do a. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, a reminder to members to sign in on the sheet. I don't know what it is now. Good. That's Robert's turn. And then audience members, if you could sign in on the sign-in sheet there, it helps with our recording secretary for the meeting. Roll call of members, we have Steve, Leah, Sandy, myself, Mike, Tom is back with us, yay, and we have Dawn absent. Notice. So we have election of the recording secretary. You remember we put this off because it was such a hot job. No one could decide who wanted it. But we did have an update. The township supervisor went out and found us a recording person to help with our minutes. And so what I'm looking for is a secretary who can be the official title and sign the documents and make sure. Because we can't legally act until we have one. We have one, anybody? We got Steve and Sandy. Steve, you want to be a signer? We have someone that's good with it.
Yeah, I'll be excited.
All right.
I just can't do that.
Yeah, no, we've officially hired a professional. Because we all know that we can't replace Dawn with anything less than a professional. She took it to a different level, so we got to keep that level. So thank you for helping us out. And so I will nominate Steve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor, say aye. All opposed? Steve, you're official. Now, if anything's wrong, it still falls. Okay, we will accept the agenda for us. Any changes, additions by members? Hearing none. We have a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second by Mike. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, agenda is accepted. We have the minutes for March 24th. Those were in your packet. That was a minutes by committee. So with everybody's eyes were on this, are there any other changes, additions? And I do want to acknowledge we did cancel April 28th because we had both attendance issues and then also things that we were hoping to do got pushed off, which you'll see in a minute, the application withdrawn. So I will make a motion to adopt the minutes for March 24th. Second by Leah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, minutes are adopted. We have public comment. Let's see, do we have any hearings on the agenda today? We don't. Oh, the zoning map ratification is a public hearing, so we'll do those comments at that agenda item. So if you're here on the zoning changes for the map, Brown Drive, and some of the others, we'll open that comment up in a few minutes. But anybody have anything else? We did receive a letter from Patrick in response to the draft open space development ordinance. Did you all receive that letter by email? Right. Okay. You have it? I need printed?
Yeah, I'll give you a copy right now.
Okay. And Patrick, you probably want to make comments, right?
Yeah, is this the right time to make a comment?
This is the right time. What's that?
I said I had a couple letters emailed.
Yeah, this was within the last day or two, so we'll get it.
Is Rebecca on?
Rebecca is,
She was on.
she's on. I don't know if she's
Yeah, but
on
this
video.
is just a public comment.
Right, I
So
really commented.
It's not a public hearing today.
Right.
Right. kind of nice if Rebecca was here also, but.
She's here.
I'll bring it
You
up.
want to talk?
Yeah, so I more or less want to read the letter, maybe with a few extra things. I think I can read it in my public comment period. I have conducted a preliminary review for myself of the open space ordinance, the draft ordinance authored by Rebecca Harvey. From that, two important areas of concern are identified here. I believe that in both cases, my feedback can help to create a better ordinance which meets the goals that Ms. Harvey has articulated previously. Those are goals that I wholeheartedly share. The first of the two things is about yard sizes and road right of way. And these things combine. Together, the yard sizes and right of way combined for what would be 166-foot wide gulf between homes on opposite sides of the road. That's a lot, 166 feet. That's a lot for any kind of development, even Westchester Farm, more than that, I believe. Probably not intended, but certainly that would not be consistent with the clustering needs of an open space development or the general neighborliness of the community, which we hope to achieve. So those two things, the yard sizes, the way that works is because yard sizes are not specified in this draft ordinance document, they would revert to the yard sizes of the underlying zoning district, to the best of my understanding, which for the ag district is 50-foot front and rear yard sizes and a 30-foot side yard. It is important to note that this would be a step backwards from the current adopted OSPDO on the books right now. The current adopted ordinance relaxes the yards to 35 feet front and rear and 20 feet side. We're trying to take a step forward. We should at least start there as a starting point. The road right of way, a standard road right of way, 66 feet is specified in this draft ordinance. From my recollection and my notes, Rebecca has previously suggested that a reduced right of way would be advantageous for more compact clustering, which needs more open space, really, and general neighborliness. I'll try to go a bit faster. The second of the main thing is community water wells. The draft ordinance states, quote, private sewer facilities may be permitted subject to the review and regulation of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, maybe even now, and or the Washtenaw County Health Department, and the approval of the township. So what does that do? First of all, the ordinance language includes only sewer and not water. It might have just been an oversight, right? I think it should be water and sewer for sure. Secondly, where it gets a little more complicated is the township is not ordinarily an approver of well and septic. However, currently this township site condominium ordinance says each condo unit or lot must have its own well and septic. In essence, that's a ban on community systems within site condo developments, which are the most common developments these days. The draft OSPDO language is thus ambiguous. Can approval of the township be construed to mean community systems are still banned by the site condo ordinance? If so, it means that an open space community needs to be a platted subdivision, not a site condo. This would represent a significant impediment and probably not intended. You know, are we telling people you got to plat their subdivisions? Why, right? So my recommendations, I'm trying to go faster. A, B, and C, you can see them in the letter. A would be relax the yard sizes back down to proportions that would be more suitable for a residential cluster, such as in the ag district, 30 feet front and rear and 20-foot side yards, something like that. B would be reduce the road right of way down to, I don't know, something lower, maybe 35 feet. I think that's too aggressive, I don't know. And the travel surface area may be 15 feet. Or the other way to do this is to keep it at 66 feet, but allow it to be coincident or overlapping with the side yard. I mean, excuse me, not with the side yard, the front yard. Side yard would be kind of weird. So that, you know, you look at the home and the front yard is there, and some of that front yard may be may be part of the road right of way. Currently, our ordinances have them separate. So you need the front yard, the road right of way, then the opposite front yard, the other side of the road. That's what makes a big, big problem. And C, make it clear that private water and or sewer facilities may be permitted. And the permitting agencies are the state and county only. Specifically, the ban on private community systems should not apply to an open space site under development. So I look forward to your active consideration of these points, which I felt might otherwise be overlooked. Sometimes practical considerations are most easily seen by a person such as myself, who has endeavored to implement the ordinance in a real world situation. That's how I see these things so fast. Rebecca Harvey has articulated a goal of removing roadblocks to making effective use of the open space ordinance. I hope we can all agree at the very minimum that no provisions of the new ordinance should take a step backwards from the current adopted ordinance. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for a little bit of time.
No worries. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for putting down the letter and it does help us because we're gonna have questions for her tonight. So thank you. All right, any other comments other than the rezone? All right. And we're off. Public comments. We will get to unfinished business. So Pierce Road, conditional rezoning that the crowd was all here for last time. Everybody was in such agreement. So, kidding. That has been withdrawn. So stay tuned, but stay off by the applicant. So new business, St. Louis Center status update of the phase 2 project. You received a sort of explanation letter in your packet, but I'm sure they are here virtually.
Tina's on.
Tina's here. Tina, you want to give a little overview?
Yes, good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Rod's gonna pump you up a little bit.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
My name is Tina Fix Woodworth. I'm with Midwestern Consulting, and we're here on behalf of St. Louis Center. Father Enzo's actually in Italy right now, so he asked us to represent him tonight. What we wanted to do was give you an update as far as phase 2 of construction is out at the St. Louis Center. We were recently before you in, I believe, January for the phase 1B, but phase 2 has actually started and completed a portion of construction, but it's been placed on hold. In the letter that we sent you, there was a graphic that kind of identified the 5 buildings, including the administration building, and then 4 residential buildings that have been constructed, and that construction is complete. There's an additional 5 buildings that have been put on hold, as well as the extension of the street to the south, just because that's not planned for a while yet. But basically it's similar conditions as it was the last time we were before you, where, COVID and the pandemic has slowed things down a bit. The focus has gone towards adult homes as opposed to the children's homes that was discussed last year. And as similar to other industries and circumstances, the pandemic has put different challenges on fundraising and also on staffing. The budget is increased based on staff difficulties that they're having right now. So the focus for the actual development of the remainder of phase 2 has been put on hold for the moment. And it's really just, maintaining the current degree of services that they can provide out there. So what our goal is, the project was approved in May of 2018. So we're a few years out now. So we wanted to give an update as to construction had started. It's on hold. Father Enzo said they're hoping to begin construction on phase 2 again in about 3 years, 2 to 3 years from now. So what we really wanted to do was come in front of you, kind of give an update, and then also just determine, since construction had already started and has been put on hold, do we need to do an extension of the final site plan, or do we just need to give you an update and let you know why the construction has stalled at this point? So it's a little bit of discussion and then figuring out, what our next step is, if we need to do the formal 1-year extensions every year, or if we can just give an update.
Hey, thank you, Tina, appreciate it, and, yeah, and I looked into this, I think Carol, you sent me some information on this too, and it doesn't look like we have to do any formal extension. Once the project is started,
Right.
there is the ability of the planning commission to review it, but, I mean, in my mind, and other members may have different opinion, if we don't have an ordinance saying, oh, you have to have a official action, I would just appreciate the updates annually to figure out where we go. I mean, you guys have been great on all these phases, coming in on time, before time. And, you know, a lot of these developments that start and stop, we don't get any of that. So I have no problem just basically annually, if you want to come in and do a review, but I don't know, members, do you have any other?
That's fine. Yeah, I'm good.
Because I mean, the way it reads, you know, if you hadn't started, then we have to do the annual
Official extension.
extension.
Yeah.
But this kind of just leaves it open, right?
Yes, once construction is started, because they didn't separate that out in different phases, so
Right.
it's not like this phase entirely has been approved, it's just stalled. However, that it's been, construction's underway.
Yeah. and that-
It doesn't determine how, you know, what the,
Right. The only thing that would make you have to come
Timing is-
back in is a significant change to the site.
right, yep.
And right now, you're still seeing the site plan as being fairly valid even 3 years from now, or? Can't really-
Yes, the specific use for buildings changed a little bit, but that was more for the homes that were already built. The children's homes had become, they no longer have their, or they were removing their children's license just due to requirements that were difficult to maintain. So those turned into adult homes, but the overall use intended for those homes is still the same. It's just an age difference. I am not aware of them having any desire to change the type of uses that are out there. I think it's, you know, the plan is still to move forward with the mixed community concept of single family homes and then the attached ones. It's just the delay in the process.
Okay, that's what I thought. Excellent. Any other comments from members? I mean, yeah, I mean, this is an amazing plan. I can't wait to see this thing finalized. The timing has just been one thing after another.
May I,
Yeah.
would you like to make a formal motion of accepting this that way, so we can put it in the record that way?
Yeah,
Okay,
just,
great.
I'll move to accept the update and hope to see you again next year with better news, right? We all.
Correct. Yep.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, motion adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Have a good evening.
Yep. Okay, now we get to our presentation of our draft SPDO. Rebecca there and ready?
I am.
All right, I don't know if it's going to do this other than maybe you want to hit some highlights or some things you want to note, and then we'll have members start to ask questions.
Oh, that sounds perfect. Thanks. So yeah, what I'll do is I wanted to just highlight a couple of things, and then in the process of doing that, I'll respond to the comments or questions that were raised. That might be helpful. So I did just want to point out, I'm starting on page 1. I just wanted to point out on the purpose. Now, your existing ordinance had a purpose statement, but I wanted to highlight for you that these are reworded in that it really elevates the preservation of open space as the primary purpose, with a secondary purpose then essentially the innovative residential design or the clustering of them on a smaller part. So there's still statements of purpose, which happen to be very important when you're looking at a master planning process like this, but they probably ring very familiar to you. So I did just want to highlight that. With respect to the scope, the second section, that is essentially where the ordinance is pointing out where these an open space preservation development is allowed. As you recall, we discussed the 5 zoning districts that have the density, residential density equivalent that requires open space options. So those have been included there. And we have, per your consensus, have identified them as a permitted use. In that, your permitted uses will still go before the Planning Commission in a public hearing. That doesn't change that. But it does remove having to go through the special use process. So it identifies the districts and identifies it as a permitted use like you would in a scope statement. Now, the next couple of areas or sections have to do with elements of design. So the first one are general development requirements. And what I want to point out to you there is, because I spent a lot of time on that when I was talking to you about conservation subdivision design, and that is both the value and the importance and the role of creating a parallel plan as the mechanism for establishing the density for the project. So under C3 is where that process is established by the ordinance. So you essentially require that they put together a parallel plan, which would in effect be something that would qualify as a preliminary plat plan if they were to subdivide, using the dimensional or the lot size and frontage requirements of the underlying district. And by doing so, they come up with a number of lots a realistic number of lots. So it's not just taking the acreage and dividing it. They actually have to create a feasible and approvable plat plan. And it's from that plan that they establish their densities. So as I said, I had mentioned that before, and subsection 3 is where that process is employed in this ordinance. Now, subsection 4, I'm going to highlight because I think it speaks to one of the comments made by the gentleman during the public comment portion. And that is this ability for the Planning Commission to modify dimensional standards within the ordinance. So the first half of that is really key. And I made this comment, I think, in my presentations, but within the plat plan, within this process, there are no lot area or width standards that you apply to the building sites because they had to be applied in the parallel plan development. So you apply them by virtue of establishing your density. And once you have your density, I can do 50 building sites, then you want them to go in and, identify the lands that are sensitive and worth preserving, identify the lands that are high-end building sites because of topography or that sort of thing, and allow for efficient use and construction of services. And you don't want the constraints of lot size or lot width, which in that sense are arbitrary because they still have to meet all of the other, if they're having on-site systems, they still have to meet those standards. So really you remove those, front and center. However, the second paragraph of that provision allows the Planning Commission then to go in and at your discretion, remove or modify or decrease any other dimensional requirements that might apply. It's not an automatic like the lot area and width, but it speaks to what the gentleman was talking about, is that, because you don't know going into it what kind of a street they might be constructing, or how many lots they might be providing, or the kind of property that you're working with. But you will know all of that when you're looking at their plan. And so if the plan supports a reduction of any of the setbacks, then you are certainly able to do that, as well as with the right-of-way width. Now, that's the provision I would point to in terms of giving the Planning Commission discretion to do that. And it specifically points out that does not require a variance because it lets the planning commission apply those purpose statements we were talking about and determine that it's appropriate to do so. But, you know, if there is, if the planning commission has, you know, wants a little bit different comfort level with that, or if, Rob, if you think that needs to be modified elsewhere, we, you know, obviously that's a change we can make. But in what I wanted to sort of emphasize was that the ordinance is in fact designed to do just that. Then the other thing within this particular section I wanted to just sort of point to is subsection 7, because, you know, as if you recall from my presentations, and then certainly it's emphasized again in the statements of purpose, that the preservation of open space is the key. But then the second part is that you're doing that you're clustering the buildings into you know, sort of neighborhoods, if you will, rather than just a linear stretch across the street. So instead of just leaving that in a purpose statement, this text actually starts giving some parameters for what those cluster areas should sort of look like in terms of size and relationship to each other and relationship to the open space. So that's actually a very key part of the design element. The next provision is really all of the parameters for the open space. This is pretty standard for open space or conservation subdivisions designs. It's the 50% standard. It identifies what needs to be preserved. I would point out here the use of the term throughout this particular provision, the use of the term designated open space, because they have to designate 50% of it. They can have more if you know, if they've designed their site such that they're only building on 30% of it, they might actually have 70% of land area that would be, you know, maybe be defined as open space, but they only have to designate 50% of it. And then it clarifies to the land areas that they cannot include in that designated open space, even though it may be from an appearance standpoint functioning as open space. So that provision, I think, is key for an applicant in identifying what lands they want to designate and how those lands are arranged, both in relationship to adjoining properties as well as to the clustering areas. Then the second, or the next and last kind of design-oriented provision is referred to as the design standards. So you have the general, which kind of sets forth the density, et cetera. Then you have a focus on the design of the open space. Then you have a focus on the design of the built area. And so this is where you're going to have standards with respect to streets and access and utilities. So this under 3, the utilities, let me just respond to the second comment that was raised. And he's absolutely right. That is intended to mean to include water. So I apologize for that was not included. So private sewer or water and or sewer. Now, with respect to the second part of the comment, and again, I'll, you know, Rob probably has a comment on this, but in my opinion, the master planning provision for this, i.e. this OSPD, you know, option, allows you to consider a community, a community system. And even though your individual site condo does not, if you are doing a site condo development within the OSPD, then it would be my opinion that the OSPD standards, just like the lot size standards, just like the review process, all of that of the OSPD supersedes that. However, again, if it feels like there would be a higher comfort level with that being specifically spelled out, that I just want to point out really was an oversight. I feel like it's covered, but we can adjust this to the extent that you feel it's the most clear and that you are the most comfortable with. Then I just want to point out that the review criteria are these are specific to the OSPD. So I know you're familiar with sort of that approach. So not only would you be reviewing your plans with respect to content, and then with respect to compliance with these individual design standards, but then you will also be applying this review criteria, much like you would site plan review criteria. But these review criteria are specific to an OSPD, so they would in essence replace that. And so that's why they're self-contained within this provision. And then lastly, I want to hit on the approval process. So this is self-evident, but this introduces a mandatory two-stage review process where they come in with a conceptual development plan. They have information, content that they are required to provide. And then you review and you give your feedback, and that, like any sort of two-step process, it gives them the feedback that they need to proceed with their engineering plans. The final development plan, obviously, then has a much higher degree of detail that is required. And in addition to the higher degree of detail and engineering required, you'll see at the end, you also are asking for things that you don't normally ask with in site plans, at least off the bat, in terms of, colored drawings. You're asking for documentation and analysis, and that is part and parcel of their proposal, that they need to provide you with these kinds of analyses, not just a site plan. And then through this process, this is where it is pointed out that it is subject, consistent with your ordinance, to the public hearing and public hearing noticing requirements, and you proceed in that fashion. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to make this one last comment, because this is different than your old plan or your existing set of standards, and it's a system that seems more comfortable for me, but obviously I'll see what you think about it. But the OSPD process is a planning process. It's a master planning process, and it belongs with the Planning Commission. The fact that they may in fact divide the property within that master plan using either the Subdivision Control Act or the Site Condo Act does not modify or alter the review process that applies to an OSPD. Now, that's why you don't see a bunch of statements in here about how it relates to that, because it relates like it would anything else. So if they have to do a plat, then they're going to, or not have to, if they're proposing to divide the land within the OSPD using a traditional subdivision, that process, then they would get their OSPD site plan, final development plan, approved by the Planning Commission. And then they would proceed through the planning process as they normally would. If they are doing it, if they're using the Site Condominium Act the Condo Act to create or divide the land using site condos, then based on your site condo provisions in your ordinance, that process would be married with this one. And so because the Planning Commission is going to conduct a site plan review of a site condo, you just do them at the same time. And so there's no need to have like these, you don't need to pepper this ordinance with those various things. I think it just makes it really complicated when you already have standards for both of those things. But again, if you feel that adding a statement to that effect of like what I just said, if you feel like that provides clarity on that issue, we can certainly do that. But I just wanted to if you were reading it and thought, that's kind of different than how we do that, which it is, that's why, and that's how that would work. So that was my sort of overview and highlight. I'm assuming you may have specific questions, and I'm here to answer or take notes and whatever you need.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. You actually answered a couple of mine, but on that last point you were making, at least from my point of view, I do feel like we should spell that out a bit. Because I think part of the incentive here is is just taking some of the complication out of the process rather than adding it back in. And when I read this, like, and then layer it on top of our site condo and everything else, until you explained it, I didn't get it, right? So I'm just wondering if that's something we should explain, because the way I read this, I mean, you can do the final plan. I mean, could someone come in and essentially work through the initial design phase, the conceptual development, and then get to the final development plan? I mean, if we didn't have any changes to conceptual development, could we approve both at the same time? Or one after the other, I should say.
No, you can.
Okay.
I know sometimes, that's actually a really observant question, because I know what you mean. Sometimes if a person is far enough along on their design, they just come in and they say, I actually have a final.
Yeah.
And can we just do all of this? I mean, the concept plan, that 2-step, is really for their benefit.
Right.
And if they've already progressed on to step 2, that's no skin off the township's nose, right? And you can proceed through both. Yeah.
Another question. Anybody step in here while I look? Mike, do you have a?
Yeah, I got one. So we've got these districts, right? AR, AG, RCL, R1, right? So when we drop an OSPD in one of those, what's the impact on the AG zoning, right? It's still on farming. So if I look at like this here, right? It's still zoned agriculture, but it effectively becomes a residential neighborhood. I don't want my neighborhoods.
So what, are you asking what could happen in the open space as far as farming?
Yes, as I look at it, I mean, it still is ag, right?
Right. Theoretically ag.
But you drop an open space into it, right? You do an ag zoning. You got all these small houses together, but it's still ag. So if my neighbor wanted to raise hogs, how does that impact the rest of the community?
Yeah. And I don't remember by reading through it, did we define the farm operations in the open space? Remember, that's allowable, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're looking at an open space proposal, they have to tell you what it is, what their plans are for the open space, and you have the ability to approve it, or say, that the use of that open space is not consistent with our ordinance. So we say that it can be used for agriculture. The distinction that this does make with ag use is that if you're not using it for ag, there is a requirement that the open space be contiguous and be functional and meaningful as it relates to where the homes are. So the homes all have to have access, not just authorized access, but that they are adjacent to it, right? So it can't just be a corner of a project site that's been reserved and claimed as the open space. So it has to be meaningful open space, with the exception of ag land. So if what you're trying to do is to preserve some kinds of open space, but also preserve some, say, prime ag soils on the property that are, some high-end ag going on, and they want to preserve that, then you are allowed to step back a little bit on making sure that's contiguous, because there's an understanding that you may not want that. So they're not required to.
I'm reading this ordinance as you get it directed. Where would I pick up that spirit of intent that you're talking?
That would be under the, what you do in an open space. And it has to be delineated in the plan. when they come to us for approval, we have to be delineated that plan. All this process happens when it's still under developer, it's still under the developer, right? This doesn't happen after the lots.
Yeah, and I just, as I read it, I just still not extrapolated, right? So. Then the other one is the sewer system. Community development. Sewer type. I don't think.
Right.
Rebecca, can you hear that?
No, I can't, I can't hear the other gentleman who spoke.
Did you want to repeat that, Mike? So,
Mike's concern is the community wells and whether the township gets involved in that. That would still have to be to the standards set by the state county too, right?
Yeah, but the end liability.
Right.
If it fails, who's gonna pay for it? If
Yeah.
it fails, who's gonna pay for it, is what you're concerned?
Yeah, the concern has been, and this came up when we first did the ordinance, was the community well concept. In that, you know, if it fails, then who's responsible, right? So that's always been an issue,
Yeah, so,
septic too, I guess.
right, so of course, this would allow anything that, I mean, the regulatory agency for a community well in your community would be the authority having jurisdiction on it. And so if they were in fact able to design it to the standards that apply, and that was found to be acceptable to that authority having jurisdiction, then that would be a part of all of these plans. And then the township would be looking at it in terms of, you know, if, for instance, if it's a site condominium development, you would be looking at that as, from the legal perspective, your attorney, you would not be, but your position would be that if it's met the design standards, and if it has met the legal standards in terms of ownership and maintenance and use, then the planning commission really isn't burdened with that. Or the township, I mean, right? Because the mechanism is there because you don't regulate it. And if you've set up the legal framework within which the project is approved, you're not responsible for it either. Just like you wouldn't be any other common element.
okay.
And this is a question maybe for you and Rob, just so I get this right. So there's a place in here, now I can't find it, but it says that, you know, this has to be to all state and federal requirements and safety standards. But then when the planning commission is provided specific authority to, under that, you know, that first section 4, we're authorized to approve specific modifications for dimensional requirements. You know, I think about the road issue, right? And say, yeah, we can modify, and then it says, well, it has to be based on the open space standards. But then my question is, what if the fire chief comes in and says, well, yeah, that's all fine and good, but you can't do that because, you know, we can't get in and out of there.
Yeah, and you're going to acquiesce to your fire chief,
Okay.
right? Like you do any site plan, because your fire chief looks at it. And you may have approved a parking arrangement, and when the fire chief comes in and says, well, but that's gonna be my fire lane,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so you always are going to defer to that.
Okay. Just want to make sure that was, we understood it. Okay.
Yep.
That, I mean, that's like one of the top issues we see in site plans, right? I mean, it's always an issue.
Yeah,
What else? Other members? Mike, any more? Mike's got another one?
Yeah, so for instance, like the type of housing, how do we keep, like, I'll call it transitory housing.
You mean the housing standard?
Yeah.
This is just dealing with the site plan. That would be based back on the district, right?
It goes back.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a development that you've authorized for either single or two-family homes. And it would not alter the whatever standards you have that apply to dwelling units in your township. So if you have minimum, house sizes or minimum, or, heights, that kind of thing. Yeah, that all applies.
How about on, Patrick brought up the issue of altering right of way widths. What's your feedback or your feelings on that?
Yeah, so, I mean, his end objective is absolutely on point, right? The idea of conservation subdivision design is allowing for the same level of development on a smaller piece of the property. And so it's more efficient, it's more cost effective, it's less land consumptive. I mean, right? So all the way around. So it's contrary to that, right? To have a lot of huge infrastructure requirements and large setback requirements. But that is why you have the value of provision that allows for some modification based on the design and the density. So I think that the safer move is to reduce your setback. But to do it through a modification. So if you have a development come in and they're proposing, instead of the 50 that might be required on an individual parcel in terms of a front setback, because it's on a local road or maybe even a collector, right? And so you've got a 50-foot setback. Okay, the same reasons for your front setback don't apply. And so you can say, look, this is a road that's serving 8 dwelling units. It's a private road and there's no reason for that. And in addition to that, we support the idea that they're only improving this much. And so you allow a 20-foot setback. But to me, that's the easier way to manage that than to narrow the right of way. Although narrowing the right of way is also an option. I mean, doing both is an option because private roads, I mean, so this is already allowing a narrower pavement width with 20 feet, which you'll want that. I mean, that's a fire lane width. And so I don't think you want to go less than 20. And then the right of way is for purposes of stormwater management and utilities. So you don't want to go too narrow, but it probably could go down to 50 for a street that's serving so few homes. But that's the kind of thing where you can have that conversation with respect to or under that provision and still and have it be related to the development at hand.
While others are formulating questions, I'll just say what I really like here, and that is, I like the aspect of the parallel plans, right? It's almost like every development should be doing that, right? And say, here's the conventional method, and then here's how we preserve more open space. And I think the part I really like that I didn't think about when we first talked about this was specifying the buffers, right? Like you're actually increasing what it looks better from the road, right? You have a buffer there, you have this there. Those are the things that come up when someone brings a development to us and people complain. The first things they complain about is, well, I can see this, right? This is going to be right out my window, or I drive down the road, it's not going to look rural in this township anymore, right? And so I like having those standards in it to say, okay, conventionally we do it this way. This way we're preserving 50% open space, and we're going to make it look better from the road and from buffering to other properties and so forth. So I like that part a lot. And then just to be clear to members, I mean, the way this is written, the number one incentive here is the private road, right? Like, you have to do this, why do these competing plans and spend all this time? Because you can do a private road, right? Which is right now the number one issue, I think, here. Something to consider. And I don't know, Attorney Thal, if you had comments or thoughts on this draft? Rob there?
Yeah, I'm here. I really haven't reviewed the draft yet. I'd probably review it for you, before you get to public hearing.
Okay.
I don't know if that's your next step is public hearing, but yeah, I haven't taken a review of it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be our next step. I mean, we've been wrestling this issue for years and we've engaged Rebecca in some hard work here. So, those are some of the things I like. My only other questions were basically legal ones, which are just making sure this fits and, we make it as clean as we can. I mean, when you do something like this, you're gonna come back in a year or two and go, we got this wrong. This is the way you're gonna do it, but yeah, so anybody else have specific questions to the draft? Things you want to, Sandy?
So Rebecca, are you suggesting that the open space not just be limited to that small area that it is now, but all over the township? For developers to be able to use this in any area of the township?
In those zoning areas.
Those
that
five
are-
zoning
Okay.
5 zoning. Yeah.
I think that is so much better, and I think people will be really excited by having a development appear that you can't see.
Right.
And so, which leads me to the next question is why can't we have these same standards for regular development?
I think, well, some of them are there. I didn't do a comparison side by side. I mean, some of the buffering is there. I just think there's so much wiggle room. So many other things we're doing in a site plan. Sometimes we don't, it's probably not prioritized. In what we do. You're probably absolutely right. But I think going through this, because the planning commission has to review every one of them, right? And you're gonna be looking at conventional plan versus, what we're asking for here. The key is to make that less confusing is because a lot of times it's like, well, this is, you all sat here, right? Every development, the first thing is the density is too high, right? So you basically say, okay, so it's the same density, but we're gonna do it a different way. And then I think that opens it up to saying it's different, so we're gonna cluster it this way, so then the buffering can get a little bit more strict in this one, but it can in conventional. Because you're just dealing with a different site plan.
Because the number of houses are predetermined,
Right.
one way or the other. There's no bonuses, there's no nothing.
Well, and it's calculated based on actual usable land, not, oh, there's 100 acres there, I could put 50 houses. Have it swamp.
Just like, it's no water there.
Right, they want to push it as high as they want to push it. Other questions? Leah? Anything? Right. And, we have more time even to review this. What I would like to do before the public hearing is have Rob review it. And I don't know what the timing is on that. If he needs a amount of time he needs, and then.
I think
Not that much. I mean, if it's in a form that you're happy with, that you think you want to move it forward, I'd review it and make some comments.
Yeah, I mean, when I read through the new piece here is obviously the private road and then the design standards. But the way they're written to me, I like it, but I don't know if it causes us to send the issues, just making sure there's no conflictions.
Right.
I guess my thought is, are there any changes that you want Rebecca to make prior, prior to it going to Mr. Gall? And if that's the case, then, we'll need to make sure that she has the opportunity to make those changes.
She identified the one correction that Patrick identified, which should be sewer and water.
Okay.
The other one was if we could spell out, how this flows a little bit with the actual site plan condo requirement. So if you're coming into this and you're reading this, you know what you have to do, right? I mean, she explained it well, but when I read it, I just didn't get it. So I don't know if there's a way to write that out, Rebecca, or not, but
Yeah, there is. I can do that. I totally understand. And I agree with you too. The whole point of this exercise is, well, one of the points is to make it easy to use and to understand and to review. And so there shouldn't be any points where, there isn't clarity. So I can add a provision, an easy statement that points that out.
And for your, Mike, for your question that I was reading through, someone else asked a question. I think you just go through the open space piece, you know what I mean, with the fine tooth comb, and then you get to the area. We can make changes to it. But in there, you'll see the delineation. They actually have to have an agreement in place among the property owners. Almost like when you're doing a development, you have to have a development agreement. Right.
So I'm a level of expertise.
Right.
Yeah, but Rebecca can't hear him.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to think about how to phrase it. So Mike was asking about, our zoning board appeals probably deals more with the types of design pieces that we see and hear more than we do. So just wondering, in this process, does anyone ever have the zoning board look at it or anything like that? I don't know.
Your zoning board of appeals.
Yeah.
So in Sylvan, does your ZBA do site plan reviews?
No, not site plan reviews. He was just bringing up design standards, which.
You don't know nothing until you see what house you put on.
Right.
What you want to do, we don't know. Usually someone comes with a house on a certain size lot, they want to put it on, they want to know what they can do. This right here, we don't know what the house is gonna be.
Yeah, it's just the site.
It's just a plan without a house, we don't know.
So this is Carol. I want to be clear. So the ZBA allows variances, obviously, for dimensional, but they do review like the Florida area ratio and lot coverage ratio, but they do not do a design standard. They do height, lot coverage, and Florida area ratio, but they don't look at the house and approve that design. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So of course now so the planning commission is going to be looking at this, just like if you were getting a site condominium development proposal. So you're absolutely right. You're not looking at the specific house on the specific lot. Although in the plan, you will be shown the sites. Let's say it's a site condo, you'll be shown the sites. You'll be shown the setback envelope, the building envelopes. So because you're looking at the master plan for the project, here's my open space corridors, here's my project buffers, my road layout, my street layout, blah, blah, blah. And they're telling you at the same time, this is going to be for, let's say, single family homes. Now, once they proceed and let's say they get their open space approval and then they proceed through and get the land division approved, they do it through the site condo, they file the master deed. And if you didn't know better, you would think you were going up to a plat, right? Because once they're constructed, they look like plats. You don't know they actually did it through the conduit. And then they can proceed to sell building sites like they could lots in a plat. And then someone comes in and they have their house plan and they understand that here are my setback requirements and here's the road has been constructed and here's my house. Well, they're subject to the house standards of your district. So, they have minimum dwelling site, floor plan sizes, they have minimum heights. And if they exceeded any of those, if the house they wanted to put on their lot exceeded the lot coverage standard, let's say, that would be before the ZBA, just like it normally would. So that's not changing the roles any, because you guys are project layout development And the ZBA is only looking at very specific waivers from dimensional standards as it relates to, building.
Yep. So this paragraph right there. So. That's it.
He's talking about, under that number 4 at the beginning, where the planning commission has the authority to modify the dimensional requirements. The dimensional modification is not subject to variance approval or further relief by ZBA. That's where you were questioning.
It seems the concept.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I can maybe try and wordsmith that a little so that there isn't this confusion, but I see what you're saying. That's intended to apply to the project design, like setbacks, right? Where we've said, yes, we're going to allow building envelopes of this size. So instead of a 50-foot, we're going to allow a 20-foot. And we're going to, there are no lot area width requirements, or we're going to, but it doesn't mean that they're going to just go through and, because they don't know what's going to be built. The house plans are right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think the confusion is language, because here we use, as Carol pointed out, ZBA specifically has structure dimensional, like floor ratios, these things, and then I guess if you read it, I could see it as confusing. Yeah, we'll have to figure out a different way to refer to that. Because, we're just talking about the envelope.
No, I understand, but it's look at
It reads like the design structure. Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'd like to see that rework. I
Yeah,
understand the intent now, but it's not.
right. We reworked that, right, Rebecca?
yep, and I've got that on my list here.
So I think between some of these wording issues and then Rob taking a look, maybe we have one more discussion at this level and then do the public hearing. So if we can do that by the next meeting, those changes, Rob, if you get a chance to actually review it by then.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing that I would say is maybe we do want to take a look at, if we're allowing community septic and well, that, we may take a look at some provisions to provide for greater protection if they fail to properly maintain them.
Yeah, to me, it would be just like, it's just like with a private road, right? You don't want to get stuck being the one dealing with that. So,
Right, exactly.
We don't like sewer.
right, no, yeah, we don't want to. So yeah, both for private road and sewer, let's look at that from a fine legal point. All right, any other comments back to Rebecca and Rob before we send them off to review? And then the timing, I think, just so you know, and for the public, is we can get to looking at that by next meeting, and the following week meeting, we can have a public hearing.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make these changes that, I can do that within the week. And then I will forward that to Carol. Would you like me to forward it directly to Rob as well? Or do you want Carol, or do you want that to go through the township?
I'll forward it to Rob so that we give him as much time as possible.
Okay. All right.
All right, we can move on. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
We have one more confusing issue to talk about. So, I love confusing issues. Wait. Yeah, this is the War and Peace novel. During our discussion, let's get our handy dandy maps out. We're gonna be talking about numbers as lots. Especially if people comment, because then we're gonna wanna know which number they're commenting on. So a little background on this before we start. This will be a public hearing, so we'll take public comment, but I do want to start out saying, how did we get here and where are we? So this has been in our agenda for a long time. We've been trying to find the time to do it when someone wasn't asking for another zoning change, so it wasn't as confusing. Essentially, what had happened, and Carol can probably say it better than me, is we, years and years ago, before any of us were involved in any of this, the business park district was thought of under these properties. And we've discussed this at a previous planning commission meeting. The business park was never properly adopted by a, was it by a motion and a resolution or
But it was not adopted by
Ordinance.
ordinance.
ordinance?
It
not
was adopted by
ordinance.
resolution.
That's right, it was done by resolution, I almost had it backwards. Okay, so essentially what we had to do was look at this and go, okay, so what do we do if this BP doesn't exist? And we've got some properties in here that even when we started discussing this have even changed, so, and they're changed since the master plan. So if you look at this area, we essentially, business park, if we take it out and say, let's go back to where we were before the business park. All that is a holding space, because the master plan determines that these could be whatever the master plan says they could be, general commercial, industrial, things like that. So the idea is we would have this hearing and put it out there, see, does everyone want to go back to where they were, or do you want to go back to someplace that you are? And then those that don't want to go back to someplace they are, because there's nothing there yet, maybe they go back to ag, but the master plan still says you could be X, Y, and Z. That's so confusing. I don't expect everyone to do it, but that's essentially where we're at. So I know we've received some feedback on some of these properties in specifically, and in this hearing, that's the point of the hearing. So we know as property owners, you can say, hey, no, I plan to use it this way. It shouldn't go back to ag, so forth and so on. So that's what we want to hear from you. And unless I missed something, Carol, I'm going to open it up for folks to give that comment. But I will note that we did receive a letter, a couple letters. First one was the attorney's letter, was about property number 15, right?
Yes, yep.
On your little map there, number 15. That was the one that wanted to be general commercial because they're backed up right next to the auto dealership that is general commercial.
Yeah, and the parcel in
And
between.
the parcel in between
Yeah,
is someone,
that's Al Harvey also,
Al
that's
Harvey's.
also, that is also under contract with the dealership. And he emailed this afternoon, gave you the email.
Yep.
He is requesting to be general commercial as well. So all 4 properties would be adjacent and contiguous and would like to be general commercial.
that would be 10, 14, 15,
10, 11,
11, I'm
actually,
sorry.
11,
Yes,
yeah.
10, 11, 14, 15, and 10, 11 is the dealership. 14 is Harvey, 15 is, well,
Like-
11 is technically the used car lot. Right?
Yep. There's a tie bar on that.
Yeah, they tie them together.
And then 15 is Mark Lewis.
15 is Mark Lewis. Okay. So we heard from those folks. I think Carol's heard from some others around 1 through 9, but many of you are here, so I'll let you speak. And then we'll go from there. So we'll start with the first hand I see. Just stand up, give us your name and,
My name's Amo Major and I'm here for Backdoor Properties.
okay?
And that parcel that we're talking about, which is, the last 6 is 20-012. I don't even know the number because I don't have one of those maps.
Here,
We just
Carol will
found
find
out
it.
about this today, so.
Yeah, that's all right.
And that's why I drove over here to at least put our comment in, so that's right. But that's the parcel we're talking about.
Okay.
I mean, it's only like 1.9 acres. It's right off the highway, and if they go back to ag, what we can do with it,
Right.
you know? I mean, it's right on 52 and 94, so.
Yeah, and I get to the point I tried to make and is that essentially by going back to ag, we go back to where we were before the wrong designation was done. And then the master plan says what could be done there. Not that it's ag, it doesn't have to stay ag. The master plan is the guiding document, says what could be done. If I knew your parcel, I'd tell you what the master plan says. Carol, do you know which parcel he's talking about?
Yeah, I do, but that's all mixed use,
Mixed
that's
use.
part of the mixed use where it could be various
It
different.
could
things.
be almost every one of ours.
Right, there's a variety of uses, so for them to want to be,
Which parcel is it, number?
14, for them to be
Oh.
general commercial, like the adjacent
Right,
dealership properties is I think what they were at requesting.
okay.
So they
I
could
just wanna
do
make sure I
it-
get it
so they
right.
could do it anyways, basically.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at the end. I just want to get where everyone's at. So who's next? Okay. Sorry, name and,
Cindy Schultz, Wolf Investment. We have 3 of the parcels that are involved in this,
is that behind your
self-storage.
storage? Okay,
And we are requesting that it does revert back to the industrial because that's what we're operating as now. And that is our future expansion.
okay. So you purchased, the back 3?
One of them we've owned for quite some
Okay.
time, and we purchased 2 of them recently and have purchase agreement on another.
Another one, okay. Those are the really small numbers you can barely read on the map on the upper right on Brown Drive.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's kind of above 8.
Yeah, there's nine parcels in that little piece,
Yeah, that's,
and 7 of the 9 kind of are in agreement with.
you all want to,
industrial.
yeah, 7 of the 9 of you want to stay industrial, or want to go,
We want to revert back.
you want to
to
revert back to
being-
industrial.
Right, because we were never notified that if there was any other change.
Well, that's why we're correcting that, yeah, that was right, okay. Who's next?
So Brian Dar, Brian Service, we're number 2 and 3 across the street there on Brown Drive.
Yep.
So we also would like to go back to the industrial. We don't see local commercial as being suitable to our business, as well as the neighbors to businesses that would be local commercial, albeit there's not very many cars available, you know.
Yeah,
Pretty much echoing the same thing, we signed up the same level, so.
right. And I remember when you came in and got yours approved,
Right,
so 2 lots across the road from each other, right?
right, exactly, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that, also, for members' sake, just so you remind, on that Brown Drive there, when we did the master plan, he hadn't done that yet. And we didn't have, there wasn't much going on there, so we were trying to figure out what to do. Now we've got several industrial uses, so just FYI, it's all in one spot. All in one spot, right?
It is pretty much becoming a development, all industrial for the most part. Baseline construction, which affects us, somewhat similar business, construction and equipment storage, vehicles, and stuff like that. So you don't see, local commercial is restaurants, grocery stores, potentially hair salons, we don't see that being suitable at all.
Yeah, my point was that a lot of that's being done now, the Burger King, the Culver's, right there in the city. All right, is someone here for the furthest west lot, number 1?
I haven't heard from the property owner.
Okay,
Farthest west on the southern side of Brown Drive,
The very west side.
number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke with him. He didn't receive the mailing, he was out of state,
okay,
so he didn't have a comment.
okay.
He didn't
Is there
have-
still a residential property there? Is there still a residence?
Yes.
I believe now he has a renter that is a business.
Oh, okay. Anybody else either on that section or on the other side? Yep.
Number 5, 20100 Brown Drive.
Yep.
Currently live there.
Yep.
It's a primary residence.
Okay.
That's what it's being used as. When I originally purchased the property, the county showed it was residential or agricultural, but
Yeah.
they're.
It was a business park, right?
Crazy. Well, not really, according to what they said.
Yeah, not really. Yeah.
It's either industrial or agricultural, depending how far you go back, because I've seen things were done right.
Right.
So guess, knowing that I live there, I prefer to be residential or agricultural, because then I'm not conforming in my view. But if it goes back to industrial, then I believe I probably am not conforming. What can I do on the property? Limiting my rights as a citizen and a taxpayer to live there and live there with some level of comfort. Because right now, not having the ability to have a garage to house my vehicles is unsafe in the wintertime, for me especially. And that's becoming an issue. So I'm disabled. I fell 26 feet off a ladder, broke my back in over 12 places. And I have medical issues, and for me to have a garage is pretty much mandatory. Being out on ice, and slippery snow is not something that my doctor recommends. So whatever can be done in my regard, I appreciate that. That'd be great. Just so you all know, I do live there. It's not a small house, not much, but definitely needs some type of garage or accessory building to safely see that before.
What's the total acres of that?
100.97 acres after the boundary adjustment that's done through the county and the township. And that's another thing, is I know that there's a 1 acre minimum called out in both the local and business, commercial, business park, whatever. It might be in all three. I know it's in the local commercial and the general commercial. So if that's the case, I would ask that be downgraded to 0.9 acres. Especially if we revert back to industrial on all those properties. If the minimum acreage was 0.9 acres instead of 1. Not only would that benefit me, but it would benefit my friend here, Brian, because he has a second parcel that he could then either sell or consider using as a separate entity. Because his is 0.9 acres. It's under that. So that 1 acre is kind of a tripping point in that regard. So if that 1 acre could be revised to 0.95 or 0.9, then it would encourage the use of both those properties on the north side of Brown, mine and his, to use in the future as potential local commercial viable options.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it came up last time. Others. Ruben.
I'm gonna stay sitting down because I can't stand. Ruben Lesser, Jerusalem Road. I got some questions because I thought I farmed parcel number 17.
Yep.
Okay. Basically, right now they've got an offer to development on that if it gets approved. I talked to one of the owners today. I guess then I want to go to parcel 19. Part of that, well, all of that is consumers' power.
Yep.
Now, that's in the white, that's not even included in this, is where there are bell sites and stuff. I don't know how that's, I mean, even my son owns other little slanted parcel, and then there's a little square there that should be all commercial or something, because that's all consumers' power where the bell sites are.
10 or 12 years ago, when they drew that map,
Yeah.
I questioned all those little ziggly lines,
Yeah.
and because they don't even go around the property.
All right.
They
It
don't
was just like-
match.
It's like they went around part of a gravel pit and they went around the pothole, and
Yeah. No.
it was kind of a weird drawing at that time.
Is that where their valves are, or is that?
Well, no,
No,
that's
not.
actually, where the white is actually high ground.
Yeah.
No.
And that may be why they
That's
went
probably why
around
they did
that.
it. I think that's why they did it.
But they got a proposal of something, and I'm not sure when they're gonna come to township, because I've been informed that I wouldn't be able to farm that next year, because they're gonna be putting up, I've heard some buildings or whatever. So I have no idea what. But I mean, being the fact that they own all that, I think it should all be, but it shouldn't be in agriculture, that's for sure.
So in the master plan, that's all mixed use. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and in agriculture, it would allow them to come in for essential services under the provision for essential services if it's zoned ag.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So if we make it ag, yeah, so if it's ag, it gives them the most flexibility of what they're dealing with now.
Yeah.
And then because the master plan has it as mixed use, anything under mixed use, they could use it for. So there's like
Okay.
7.
well, we'd have to zone it.
Well, I mean, we would zone it,
Yeah.
but they could propose any of those.
Right,
7
and they
zones.
haven't said anything, and they actually are coming in with a site plan for that, and they designated ag
In their site plan?
in their site plan, right?
They have a site plan they're coming in. for.
Yeah, you're right.
So the point, okay. Well, we'll see. Yeah, but I hear you. And that jaggy line, I don't,
Did somebody speak about parcel number 15?
that's the one that we got, the letter on.
Yeah, oh, that's what you guys.
And they wanted to go with the same as the general, no,
Yes, general.
general commercial, sorry.
Okay, right.
Because they want to be contiguous with the dealers.
Yeah, because they're running a commercial business out of it.
Right. Yeah. And then those others, yeah, so ag, well, that's, I mean, yeah, I asked Carol this today about 17, because when we did the master plan, they came in and said they wanted that mixed use, because they had a number of ideas. Okay,
What about the, so Fisher property, is that 13? Or 13?
12 and 13 is Tom McKernan.
yeah, 12 and 13 is McKernan's,
Oh, okay.
that's the barn section, right? So. What'd you say?
Nancy and Dale Fisher sold that. It's a house.
Well,
It's
that
on
was
Brown
in,
Drive.
On Brown Drive?
that's the other side, that's Brown Drive.
It's right on the other side of Brian.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's the other side.
Now, I got one more question if I can.
Yeah, one more.
There's parcel 20 and 22 on the back side of 17 there, which I think is Eddie Pieces, and that's all agriculture. That's gonna stay that way?
Yeah, what we would do tonight is revert that back to ag. And then again, the master plan would allow any future development there. They have to.
But 21 is Consumers Power.
Yep,
And 23 is mine.
23 is yours, yep.
But it's only a portion of your.
Huh?
It's only the top portion, another one of those screwy configurations.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because its tax descriptions don't reflect that.
right.
Right, it splits it on here, but not, yeah.
The only other comment I would have is on number 19, square that goofy section, square that off to the property line. If they're gonna, we're part of 19, that whole parcel is now part agricultural and part business park.
Well,
We got a big parking area there.
right, so what would happen is when it reverts back,
It would just
it would go back to,
Sure,
it
that
would
whole-
be all
okay.
agriculture.
Yeah, it would, yeah, it'd start to mix in with that.
So, would be a second.
5 and 1 with.
reduce our taxes, what you?
Yeah, you'll have to go to the first Tuesday of the month. Yes, Rod, please do that.
Don't bring me to this.
Hey, man, you're here. There was someone else. Did you have?
My name is Bill Lewis, and I'm 16.
Yep.
And you guys are considering moving general commercial down to 50, like you consider 60.
Okay.
It's 10 acres, but it's very damn.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a little, yeah.
And I think that's a last small parcel.
big stuff.
So I appreciate it if you consider that.
Okay.
When considering, or 15.
15, yep. Makes sense to me.
So what I'm showing is 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, and the two parcels for the barn sanctuary, 12 and 13, would remain agriculture. Everything else on the west side of 52 would be general commercial, is being what is being requested.
No, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16 would all be general commercial.
Yeah, what did I say?
I think you said it opposite.
I said it, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Those would all be general commercial.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And then the barn sanctuary,
12 and 13
Tom's,
would be
yeah, would be
agriculture,
ag.
right,
Then
Sorry.
everything on the other side would be ag,
right.
because that's the way it was before. It was PE. And then, I'm sorry, any more before I try to figure this out? Okay, so 1 through 9. We have number 5 issue to talk about. The rest are happy in industrial, which is what they would have been before VP. Number 5, I have a question on, so even ag, the lot is non-conforming, right, Carol?
Correct.
So it doesn't matter what zoning we use. Is how do we get to making this better? The ag is
2 acres.
And
and it would be-
residential's 1.
And it would, I don't know, Mr. Saul could address it, it would be also spot zoning, because it's not anywhere close to any other ag.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't quite hear all the comments on 5 from the citizen making the comment on it. But yeah, you have to keep in mind that you really, in that sea of property, to change it to say like an ag or residential would not, would be spot zoning into it, that spot there. Whether you could go to a local commercial, if they wanted local commercial or something like that, that would be what the future land use plan calls for. I'm not sure what their,
The issue, Rob, was that, you know, this is his residence and he has limitations that he needs a garage and he's never been able to put a garage here because the lot doesn't conform to any of the zoning. And my question was, is there any way while he's living on this property and it's his residence that he could get a garage? And I just don't know.
I mean, you could go to the ZBA. Has he been to the ZBA to ask for a garage?
They can't grant special uses because it's a non-conforming use, so that was one of the issues, is it wasn't just a lot variance, because it's
A use variance?
it would be a use variance, yep. And they can't grant use variances,
If you took them to ag,
you can't,
Well,
it's spot zoning.
It's spot zoning, we do that, spot zoning. We're gonna continue to think on this one. Because I mean,
Yeah,
I see the problem. I mean, this isn't about the future land use. It's about the fact that we have a residential lot that's basically stuck without the ability to.
I mean, maybe that's something to consider for a text amendment, you know, to allow residential property in a non-conforming area to have a garage on it. I mean, you'd think that the ordinance should allow, if you have a residence that's not conforming, to have the normal things that a residence would have.
Right.
You know, and not be prevented from having something like a garage associated with their home. So that could be a text amendment issue, you know, that maybe if we can't do it in a different way, it could just be done by text amendment to allow for that type of situation.
You could meet.
For industrial, but not for local commercial.
Okay. So
Can meet the setbacks for industrial, which coincides with your land use.
Right.
In terms of, 50 foot
So the setbacks are fine, it's just the fact that you're a non-conforming use at this point. Because
I'm
of,
not the only,
right,
I mean, there's a house next to me that currently is being used.
right.
Well,
But there, and that was the issue is, when you have a non-conforming use, you can't expand if you're a non-conformity.
Can't
You
make
can't
it
make
more
it more
non-conforming.
non-conforming, right?
Yeah, no,
But you can build in provisions that take into consideration like non-conforming residents to allow a residential non-conforming residents to, to have maybe some different rights than other non-conforming parcels. Because when it comes down to it, even if a parcel is non-conforming, typically you're going to allow them to build a home on it.
right.
Or maintain their home on it. So, I mean, you could deal with it through text. Are you saying that if it were industrial, would the setbacks be okay?
Yeah, industrial setbacks work.
Because maybe that's the way to deal with it is to, I mean, what you ultimately really want to do is to be consistent with your zoning is to have that industrial.
Right.
But then you could look at doing a provision in your ordinance that would allow non-conforming residents to also have a garage
Yeah.
on their property.
Accessory structure, garage.
Right, have an accessory structure provision for a non-conforming residential structure.
it falls within setbacks and surface area.
Yeah, as long as it's-
Industrial.
Right.
Yeah,
It's still
Right.
follows.
especially if it can meet the setbacks, then why not? I mean, then it's not jamming something in where it can't fit.
Right.
It's just trying to put something on there that is really a use variance that we can't do without some other kind of text.
Well, I don't know how other members feel, but I think we should look at that. All right. Well, part of the process that we have to do tonight anyway is for 1 through 9, we've got to pull you out of this one and post another hearing to officially do you guys differently than you're labeling in here. If that makes sense. So for all 1 through 9 to go industrial, we'll pull all those out and do this again. Obviously, you don't have to come and speak again, but we'd have to officially have this meeting again, a hearing, and do those 9 as industrial. The same for 14, 15, 16, right? Because 10 and 11 are already part of that, right? Carol, they're
10
already.
and 11 are already been properly noticed.
Already properly done. So we'll pull out 14, 15, and 16 to go general commercial and also do those next one.
That should be easy to do because we already.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That,
so
so.
if we can do 1 through 9 and 14, 15, 16 next month, we would just have a quick hearing, approve it there.
and then,
Yep, go ahead, Rob.
oh, I was just gonna say, then, with regard to, they said maybe 17, they're looking at developing, moving forward. If we put it back to ag, it's plant, and ag is what it was before, so that's kind of what it truly is right now, really is ag. We're just kind of making it official that that's what it is. I mean, obviously, it is planned for mixed use. So if they do come in with some type of development that fits within the mixed use, future land use, they can ask for rezoning to whatever would be appropriate for that development.
Right.
I'm sure as long as it falls within those, the number of different types of uses allowed in mixed use.
Right.
Which is general commercial, highway commercial, multifamily residential, or industrial.
Right. So my Chick-fil-A can still go there. Good, you got a dream.
And a grocery store.
And a grocery store, yes. Yeah. a good one. All right.
Clean.
A clean one, a clean one. All right, so we close the public hearing. I think we have a good understanding. Members, do you have any other, and I do think, Rob, we should come up with a text amendment for non-conforming residents It just-
Does this have to go back to the board because they have to allocate money for it?
They have to
and
allocate money
who
for
would
Rob to do it? For what?
For a text amendment?
Oh, for the text.
Yeah, because there's a public hearing process and normally we have the applicant pay for it. But that would have to be go to planning, the boards to see what they say and how they want to approach it.
Sandy. Wake up.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm sure. that the-
you're the board member
I'm sure
representing.
the board would approve that.
Okay, so you will take that to the board.
I will.
Thank you. Rob, I won't recognize you. You're not even here. You're too busy lowering my taxes. All right, so tonight we can approve if we so choose. You have to pull out the property numbers to these, right? Carol?
Yeah, you could just do by number.
Just do them by number?
Yeah,
Yeah, it'll be a motion in a minute.
because the number is in the, so the notice to the public notice contains the corresponding number.
Right. Okay.
And remember, it's a recommendation to the board that you're making.
Yes, we're making recommendations, that's correct. So let me pull out 1 through 9. 14, 15, 16. Okay. So the motion would be the motion to recommend that the board approve the zoning map changes for numbers 10, 11, 12, and 13, 17, 18, and 19. That's what I got. Is that right?
How about 20, 21, 22?
I'm sorry, I
23?
didn't change my paper. 20, 21, 22, and 23. Yes. There we go. So it'll be 10, 11, 12, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. Those would revert as noticed here.
I think you,
Go ahead.
Dave, I think you included 10. Oh, okay, those are gonna, you're right. Those revert back to their prior.
General commercial, yep.
Yeah.
So 10 would go BP to general commercial, 11, same thing, 12, 13, or, you know,
12 stays ag, doesn't it? 12 and 13.
12 and 13 go from BP to ag, or revert back to ag, 17, 18, 19 all go to ag, and 20, 21, 22, same thing, so 23.
Mhm.
That would be the motion, don't worry, I am very good at cleaning that up. But it's based off of the noticed numbers that we have, which you have a copy of, right? You have a copy of this?
Should be there, yeah.
Okay. So the motion would be to recommend to the township board that those zoning changes be made. Do I have a second? Second by Tom. Is that right? A motion by Chair, a second by Mr. Ferris. Any other discussion on the motion?
Where's 18? I didn't see an
18 is 2317 M52, currently business park.
Actually, I'm sorry, you're right. I missed it in the map. It's this little parcel here.
It's that little tiny.
Yep. I
Oh,
missed
that's
it.
18.
I
Okay,
missed it,
thanks.
sorry.
I just didn't see an
Yep,
18.
thank you.
Vote on.
Yep, thank you.
It didn't have a number on it. Yep, 18. It's listed correctly in the notice. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion is adopted unanimously. All right, so we will be back for 1 through 9, 14, 15, and 16, hopefully by next month, we can get all the notices back out. And then we will work on getting the township board to help us help number 5. Sounds like a t-shirt. Should I make t-shirts and attend the board meeting? Help us help number 5. Yeah, each 5. All right. That Thank you, Rob. As always.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I do want to, I do have a couple comments here before we adjourn. Let me get my notes. Carol, do we have any communications? Do not, right?
No.
Nothing from neighboring folks. Comments of planning commission members. I'll start for me. We received some emails, letters, things around reviewing the master plan. It is the month of May, so it's officially turning 5 years old. So what I would like planning commission members to do is go back and read your master plan, the works of those 5 years ago, and take a look at it with the following considerations. At this point, we can do one of 3 things. We can come together and say the master plan is still good, and we don't see need for major changes based on the fact that there haven't been major changes in the township. Like last time when we had a M52 bypass going through it, all these things that had expired. Yeah, we have multiple things in there that just didn't exist anymore. The second option we could do is we can do a modification. I talked to Mr. Thal. It's a somewhat scaled down version of the full redo, where you can do some modifications. Still quite a lengthy 6-month process. Or you can do a complete redo like we did last time, which was a year of fun, so those are your options. What I'd like to do is have a discussion at the next planning commission meeting about how you all feel about those 3 options, and then we can go from there. That's essentially our duty as a planning commission. So the board, what do you want to do here? So think about it.
Where's the sign?
Sign ordinance, where's the sign ordinance? Mike is
You
really
just-
concerned about
You
the
just
signs
threw
on
another
Capitol Hill.
ordinance in, so it's like, what is the priorities, it's like, think how long it takes. We have, to try to get through some of these ordinances, the OSPs out there. The sign ordinance is so far down on the list, although it really is a priority because we're non-compliant with so many things, and I would love to see it elevated, but that is a major undertaking. It is, but I thank you for mentioning that because
It sounds like it's gonna come out sooner than we plan.
What's what was the name of the chicken restaurant in Seinfeld? Is there a sign next to you about that?
No,
I mean, I move out, the whole place goes.
I appreciate that, Mike, because that really is a good reminder that we really should be revisiting that. And maybe that's the next thing that the board could request Rebecca to assist us with.
Well, we got the lake zone and stuff.
Yeah, that was the idea of last November of having the joint meeting as what is some of the priorities, and Supervisor Kennedy had listened to everyone about what some of these priorities are, and one of them was creating a lake district and some of the other things that, were kind of rose to the top there.
Yeah, between the ZBA and us, I think that was a top priority.
Because the need for 1 acre sites on the lake no longer exists because you have sewer.
I think somebody asked me about the Feeney property, what's going on with that?
Oh, no.
Any, the law, the one that's in court.
Yep.
That's stone for.
Yeah.
And then the one that pulled out, the Pierce Road,
Mhm.
nothing new yet.
Signs down too. For sale signs.
Equipment driving around out there. 3 trucks there. Bigger.
Are they farming?
Today.
They've done something. They're a good plan. Other questions, comments, concerns, planning commission members or Carol? So for Carol, for next month, we have to fix these last.
Yep.
14 or so lots, and then the township board will take a look at that non-conforming residence text amendment. It may behoove you to show up the township board and explain what you explained to us, although these 2 fine folks will take that with them. When's your next meeting, Rob?
10th.
10th, June 10th. Yeah. 10th is a Friday.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Seventh?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe wrong day.
Yes.
Seven.
You're right,
Yeah,
that's just
7 o'clock on the
saying.
7th. That's Kenny Rogers. Someone put a Kenny Rogers chicken. I think it's red. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Tom, second by Leah, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, unanimous, adjourned.